Coogs House, and a weekend where we couldn't stop talking about the potential and then real football news. The basketball team had a really important victory on Friday night.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a UofH fan or just a hater, you can stop by. Please subscribe down below. Then we play some Cougs and YouTube feed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. That's where we found us. It's so good to see you again. We're just over 1750. The giveaway is going to Kenneth. I commented on a comment of his to tell him to DM me. So make sure you go DM me, Kenneth. I'll do another giveaway at 2,000, so hit subscribe, help us get there. Like and comment on the videos to let us know you are in that contest. If after listening to us talk about basketball and you heard the other episode on Will Fritz, you just don't know what to say, tell us what you thought about the officiating, because we're going to talk some about officiating today in the Sunday night football game. All right, so today's episode is a bonus episode. This is the second episode of the day, so go check out the first one about Will Fritz being hired. If you're looking for that, you're in the wrong place. It's just the other episode, so go check that out and then come back to this one, or watch the short bonus episode and then go check out that one. But we're talking about the Houston Cougar victory over the Xavier Musketeers. First of all, as far as mascots go, Musketeers, very strong. But Houston beat Xavier on Friday night, 66-60. So if you've been following along with Locked On Coogs, you know that I'm coaching high school basketball. I coach high school basketball. We had our own tournament Friday. And then I had to watch funeral on Saturday and then go back to my own tournament the rest of the day that day. So I had to watch this game in multiple parts. And I really think, on top of basketball being a great distraction from things in life, sometimes that's why I love talking about basketball, because it's just the perfect distraction sometimes. I really, really think that this game is more interesting having watched it in two parts. I watched about a little bit more than the first half in one part. And then had to take a pause, live life a little bit, come back on Saturday night and watch the second part. And it's interesting to me that, that's just kind of around the same time that Houston went from, what were they up? At that point, it was by 13 in the second half and a relatively low-scoring game. Okay, they got this in the bag. I'll watch the rest of it tomorrow. No big deal. And I really tried to do a really good job of, I don't turn off Twitter and mute Twitter and whatever. I know Houston won or whatever, but I don't go listen to, I listen in my own free time, other people's podcasts, but if I haven't recorded my own thing, I don't go listen to them or whatever. I didn't go listen to Pod Slam. I just got home and done it every day, but anybody else, because I want to make sure I was fresh minded and watch the game and fresh minded record my own thing. But that interesting turning around that suddenly happens when around that 13-minute mark, Jamal Shead gets his fourth foul. Around that 13-point lead, Jamal Shead gets his fourth foul, and became very apparent in this game that Jamal Shead was going to be unable to sit down. it just in playing a high level team like Xavier, and Xavier is the best team per Ken Pom Houston has played this year. Utah and Towson and Dayton all being close, but not the same. Houston very clearly did end up needing to have a true point guard on the court at all times. And that is Jamal Shead for this team. That's the only option for this team. And I say that because LJ Crier is the MVP of the game. He's the reason they won the game. His 23 points. He started hot, finished hot, made free throws on the stretch. He is the reason they won the basketball game. Defensively, I'd argue Emmanuel Sharp playing as well as he did, crashing in for boards. Juwan Roberts playing smart as he did, playing against, talented bigs down low. Xavier Francis was a beast. His length came into play on so many different shot attempts and shot deflections, frankly, shot intimidations, right? I thought it was really interesting that offensively, they didn't have a point guard or anyone that could fill that role besides Jamal. Now, Crier is he is 6'1" and will probably have to do some combo stuff at the next level. But at this level, he's very much a shooting guard. He is looking to score, and he is really, really good at it. But orchestrating an offense takes a different kind of ball player, and that was the unique and special thing about Marcus a year ago, right? Is that Marcus could do both, and that's why he's a certified top 25 pick pro, right? And Crier's learning to do both. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he'll never do both. But on Friday night, when they needed another point guard and it wasn't Jamal Shead, they only gave Malik Wilson a couple minutes here. They kind of let Emmanuel Sharp do a little bit there. Terence Arsenal's not really a point guard, but he only played 13 minutes, which we'll get into in a minute, but not the best showing there. And I love Terence, but that just won his best showing. And Jamal Shead was just missed. He played just 28 minutes. And frankly, you could argue that had he been able to play the normal 36 minutes or 34 minutes or whatever, he'd have been okay, right? Now, I don't want to give no credit to what happened over on the other sideline or on the other basket. Desmond Claude had, he's a good shooter. He had another good shooting night from inside the arc. Obviously, we talked about beforehand, he's much more of a finisher at the rim. He had a couple other jump shots as well, but he was very much a rim going kind of guy, over 5 from 3. He did get 24 points without a 3-pointer. That's impressive. I think they tried to go inside with some of the bigger guys, the Shani or Usman or whomever. Didn't matter. Like I said, Xavier Francis' length was able to deter all of that. I'd be interested to know in your comments what you thought was the turning point of the game that went fully back to Houston's way. I really thought that honestly, it was just bringing Shead back in and him playing foul-free basketball with that fourth foul. Tugler, I thought, played well. Speaking of guys with foul trouble, that Tugler played particularly well. Just a high motor guy, but getting 5 fouls in just 13 minutes of play, can't do that, man. And I mean, you obviously can't do that. They foul you out of the game, but that's also like you got to have smarter court awareness. Know where your body is, know where your limbs are, know where your hands are. That you got to cut that out. We need Tugler too much for him to be doing that. He's really our third big man in every sense of the way, which leads me to the conversation I want to have in the second segment. That is talking some about one Terence Arsenal and why he didn't get a whole lot of clock in this game. And I love Terence. I love watching Terence play basketball, but I don't disagree with the decision. But first, one decision I think we can all agree on is that when you need to get a new member of your team, an LJ Cryer perhaps, someone to come in and score a bunch of buckets, it feels like a really stressful situation. And if you want to fix the situation, you got to go to LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure you have the top tier candidates possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the tools you need to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to hire. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So I mentioned that I love Terence Arsenal's game. I told y'all last year that dude's a pro basketball player. He just moves a little differently. Guys that are 6'5" and change with long wingspans aren't typically that kind of fluid beyond the arc. I understand he played a lot of forward in high school and he's working his way into the guard type stuff, and it's all a work in progress. The kid's a pro. He's a pro. And he played not so great in his 13 minutes on the floor the other night. Had just 2 points, 1 of 3 shooting. But it's not the offensive stuff, I think, that worried us as much as it was the first time I felt like Terence was what I would have called a negative defender. And that is to say that he's going to give up more points than he scores. Now, there's 2 ways to be a negative defender. Either you don't score much or you give up a lot of points. And I kind of felt like on Friday, Terence was flirting with both. And so, honestly, Sampson took him out. And I appreciate, and I think he was right, that it felt like Terence was about a half step slow off the ball. If you go back and watch that game at all, it's not necessarily that the guy he's covering is scoring a lot, although Desmond Claude, when he was switched on to him, did kind of eat him up a little bit. It's more about backside rotations on things, and it frankly feels a lot like what we went through with Jarris Walker a year ago. Jarris is a tremendous basketball player, incredible athlete, probably one of the best athletes in any sport to come through the University of Houston, right? But he'd been the best athlete in the room for so long in his life. There were moments that he made freshman mistakes, as Coach Sampson would call them, on the backside of defenses. And you'd see him come in and make sports center type blocks and give open threes, or he'd be, way too often help. And then the kick out to three would happen. He'd be late on the kick out and be fouling a 3-point shooter because he can't slow some down. Those kinds of things happening, right? Now, I don't necessarily think that Terence Arsenal is in any trouble. It seems like it's just a bad game. But I think what it tells us about the Cougars is more interesting. And it tells us that, A, they can win with one of their better players having a bad game. Because I would say Arsenal is like an important piece of this team. His ability to play the 2, the 3, and the 4 is vital. Changes up a lot of different lineup stuff you can do, a lot of different fun things that they can have with all kinds of different personnel out there. But it also tells us that even with as deep a team as they've got, the starters are guys that got to come to play. Cryer, Shead, Sharp and Dunn, and Roberts. Even with the team as deep as we know that they can be, because they went a real 10 deep, and frankly will probably always go a real 9 deep, just depending on if they want to put Malik here, Ramon there, whatever, right? Regardless, those 5 guys, and I know I didn't mention Xavier, and he's a starter, but I mentioned Damian because he and Sharp will split that role a lot. Those 5 guys have got to come to play every day. And in that way, it felt like a game from last year. Last year, Houston really, in critical moments, played about 6.5 guys. It didn't feel quite as dramatic this time, but when you look at the minutes distribution, the starters all played 23 or more minutes. Remember, in that 23 or more minutes, you have Francis had 4 fouls and Jamal Shead had 4 fouls, but they all played 23 or more minutes. The next highest minute total was Damian Dunn at 14. That's almost a 10-minute difference between the lowest starter and the highest guy off the bench. And that's frankly, they hadn't played a game quite as close. It's the only single-digit win they've gotten this season. It's also probably the most difficult road game they'll play in the non-conference this season. But it's interesting to see that shake out that way, and it felt like a game of old. And I watched it in a couple different parts. So maybe that's my, jumping around and my brain's been all over the place with everything going on, those kinds of things. But it was interesting to see that kind of, reversion back to the old. Now, Houston plays Rice on Wednesday, and what should be, for all intents and purposes, a get-right game. They play Jackson State on Saturday the 9th. Again, all intents and purposes, a get-right game. But then a week from Saturday, play A&M at Toyota, which is technically a neutral site. The game, I forget if it's the game before us or after us in this little 4-team deal, is LSU, UT Austin, and then we play A&M all at Toyota Center. So it's called a neutral site game because I guess theoretically tickets could be amongst any of the 4 schools. I would hope we have a good showing at that one, right, as the school from in town. I am really impressed. I don't know if you've watched A&M play yet. A&M is really good this year. They're playing a hyper-efficient offense, pretty stringent defense. Kim Pomp's got them in the top 25. If Houston had played A&M on Friday, I think they'd have lost. And I'm not saying that they're going to go undefeated this season. They're playing the Big 12. They won't. But a non-conference loss could be a big deal, especially when you have like Xavier, A&M, and Penn, right? Or your non-tournament, non-conference big teams, right? I feel like that they gotta improve a lot between now and the A&M game. They can continue to find a second floor general. If it's Malik, if it's developing Cryer into that guy, I think both are viable options. I think Sharp can do it as well if they can develop him into that role. They got to find a second floor general because it's not right to Jamal to play all 40 minutes. We saw how that wore him down last season by March. And frankly, we also saw on Friday that he's going to be in foul trouble sometimes because he's playing the kind of defense and intense defense that Houston requires of their guys. And that's going to lead to foul trouble. Now, for what it's worth, I saw a lot of commentary. Again, I can't completely avoid Twitter. I'm as addicted as anybody else. So a lot of commentary about fouls, and this foul and that foul and da-da-da. And what I hate to break to people is that in the Power 5 conferences, there are more fouls called per game. So in the Big 12 this year, it's going to be called tighter. It just is. And that should help Houston in some ways because they'll get to the foul line, foul other guys out. Houston's deep. Other teams aren't as deep. That's a good thing. It also means that the intense defensive brand of basketball Houston plays has to be sharp, has to be clean. And they've played clean games before. I'm not saying they can't do it. But they got to be clean. Hands-free defense, man. And I think they're capable. I think they've got the athletes to do it. I think they've got a really, really talented backcourt, like deep, talented backcourt. But it's going to come down to if Shead's the only point guard on the roster, only floor general on the roster, can he play 36 minutes? He can play 36 minutes every night. He can play 36 minutes 2 nights in 3 days, 3 weekends in March and 1 weekend in April. That's a lot to ask, man. It's a lot to ask. We're going to be following along the entire way. This is just jointed. Watching the game led to a little bit late analysis, but we'll talk about Rice on Wednesday morning, recap Rice by Thursday morning, et cetera, right? So make sure you hit subscribe for all things Locked On Coogs, including our basketball team, because I love talking about Houston Cougar basketball. Love talking about Houston Cougar basketball. It really helps distract from a lot of the rest of the world. We are also spending this week talking about the Willie Fritz hire in the football program. If you're looking for that, when you got to this episode, remember there's a full-length episode of that on the other part of the channel. So go check out that as well. Remember to hit subscribe. Get us each and every day in your podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast. For a second listen, if you're this far into it and you like college basketball, go check out Locked On College Basketball. It's a great listen. Andy and I do a great job breaking down all the biggest news across the entire college basketball landscape. Locked On Coogs is proud of Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.